scenarios on the table right now where they're looking at what they can do should conditions escalate on the ground. And we saw already today a report coming out that Libya is preventing foreign workers from leaving the country, possibly to help use them as a blackmail card to put pressure on the international community from its side.
OK, Tariq Youssef, thank you very much indeed for your analysis there.
Pleasure.
Well, Al-Jazeera's Jackie Rowland can join us now from the eastern city of Benghazi. So, Jackie, there's been fighting in various places throughout the day. Do we have any clearer picture of who's controlling what now?
Well, yes, the problem here is that there are often many conflicting reports, and often reports that we can't confirm, or reports that subsequently turn out to be inaccurate. We have heard reports of pro-Gaddafi bombers striking targets in AlJazeera. What I can confirm, however, is fighting around the rebel-held, or at least it was rebel-held town of Ras Lanouf during the day on Friday. This was pretty much the front line for the rebels, the anti-Gaddafi forces, and they were engaged in fighting with pro-Gaddafi forces. We know that a large number of casualties were brought to the hospital at the rebel-held town of Breka. We don't quite know how the fighting started. We heard one report that it was a group of volunteer soldiers who were not acting on the order of officers, but basically took it upon their own initiative to engage in fighting against the anti-Gaddafi forces. And what we've seen ourselves touring the region close to the front line today is that there are a large number of volunteers with little or no military experience who seem to be operating in a very undisciplined manner. Anyway, to discuss more about the issues rising from this lack of discipline and the fact that there are so many young and inexperienced volunteers in the armed forces, I'm joined now by Donatella Rivera from Amnesty International. I mean, Donatella, what kind of concerns from a human rights point of view are raised when you have these kind of irregular forces, many without training, without proper protective equipment, etc.?
Well, obviously the fact that as well as putting themselves in danger, their modus operandi is putting the civilian population in danger too. Just as we're standing now doing this interview, there has been a lot of fire that has been let off. We're in a very built-up area. Some of what we've heard is also large caliber, so it's extremely dangerous. And you know, the lack of discipline is clearly showing in this. Another concern is the very, very young volunteers. What we'll have to refer to them as child soldiers, because they are 15, 16 years old, who are carrying weapons and who are saying that they're going to fight. Now, if these young children, in fact, they are actually allowed to use the weapons that they're carrying around, that would be tantamount to using child soldiers. Again, they would be putting their own safety at risk, as well as that of those, of the civilian population in the areas where they are taking action.
Now, you've also been touring hospitals, morgues, talking to pathologists. I mean, have you been able to garner any evidence at all so far that would suggest that there have been unlawful killings thus far in this conflict?
There have certainly been unlawful killings. The scale and the percentage of the unlawful killing versus what can be sort of indiscriminate or reckless type of firing, or killings of uninvolved bystanders that may have occurred at a time when armed clashes were taking place between protesters who had by then acquired weapons because they had looted the army barracks and were engaged in firefights with Gaddafi forces inside the barracks. So killings occurred in both occasions. So there were unlawful killings. Not all the killings were unlawful, but there certainly were unlawful killings of protesters who were not using violence and were posing no threat to the lives of the security forces.
Donatella Rivera, thank you very much for joining us. So as you can see, clearly a very confused situation along the front lines and also here in the main city of Benghazi, the main rebel-held, opposition-held city. The fact that there are so many people now who are armed and so many people who are firing in an undisciplined manner, and you've probably heard just during the conversation that we've been having, ammunition being fired off. And of course, when it comes to bullets, when it comes to heavier caliber bullets that are being fired, what goes up must come down, and clearly there's a lot of danger there about injuries to civilians and innocent bystanders.
OK, Jackie Rowland. Jackie, thank you very much indeed. Jackie Rowland live in Benghazi. Protesters are making themselves heard in Yemen, where President Ali Abdullah Saleh has rejected the opposition's proposal for transfer of power. But in the capital, Sana'a, demonstrators continue to call for his immediate resignation. Our correspondent Hashim Al-Barra is there.
Sana'a University Square, the focal point of the anti-government demonstrations. Again, thousands gathered after Friday prayers, chanting the slogans which have echoed across the country. The president has to go. Opposition members take to the podium, reminding the crowds that their fight will be a protracted one, but that eventually President Saleh will be forced out.
I wish if he understands to get out from our home, because we want to be free. We want to be free. Please Ali, get out.
At their own rally, President Saleh's loyalists are firing back. They gathered in thousands in a show of support for their beleaguered leader. Influential tribesmen, clerics, and members of his ruling party joined anti-government protesters, accusing him of dragging his heels on reform.
This is Tahrir Square. This is where the anti-government protesters initially wanted to gather, but they were denied access to this site, which is now occupied by Ali Abdullah Saleh's loyalists. As you can see behind me, they are very defiant. They're brandishing banners and posters saying that the president remains the symbol of unity and stability, and that the future of Yemen can only be decided through ballot box.
The government and official media denounces the protesters as anarchists, conspiring with Western powers to destabilize the country.
Yeah, I'd like to tell the world that Ali Abdullah Saleh is our father, the father of all Yemenis. We want peace. We don't want terrorism. We don't want a war, a civil war between Yemenis.
3 weeks since the start of the popular demands, attempts to broker a deal between the president and the opposition have failed. Saleh wants to stay in power till 2013. His opponents say that his mere presence is an obstacle to real change. Hashim Al-Barra, AlJazeera, Sana'a.
Anti-government protests have been gaining momentum across Iraq too. Riot police used batons and water cannon to disperse demonstrators on the streets of Basra. Meanwhile, in the capital Baghdad, thousands converged on Tahrir Square for the second Friday in a row. They're calling for improved services, better pay and an end to corruption. Many walked for miles to reach the protest after authorities banned cars from entering the city centre. Politicians in Taiwan say they feel threatened by China's plan to boost defence spending by 13%. Beijing